Hey there, I want to give you some instructions for your work time today, but before we do, let's just make sure we have cleared up the difference between an observation and an inference. An observation is any information that you can gather using your five senses. So I put an icon here of the five senses to help you remember that. So if you're making an observation, that means you're either telling us something that you can see, hear, smell, taste, or feel. You can prove it because you can witness it with your own five senses. So for instance, an observation would be that Miss Kipling has a yellow headband. Now, when you make an inference, what you're really doing there is you're taking an observation, so same five senses, you're taking that observation and you're combining it with information that you have already in your brain, and you're trying to explain that observation. So let's pretend that you're trying to make an inference about my yellow headband. We know it's yellow, we can see it's yellow. That's the observation. But an inference might be Miss Kipling's favorite color is yellow. Now, do you know for sure my favorite color is yellow? You could ask me, but it's not something that you can observe. You can't observe someone's favorite color just by looking, right? You'd have to know more about that person. So even though you might not know me that well yet, you do know that people sometimes wear clothes and accessories that are their favorite color. So that's a pretty good inference, right? So even though it might not be true, that's a pretty reasonable explanation for my yellow headband. So remember, an observation is any information you can gather using any of your five senses. You can prove it. And an inference is your explanation for what's going on there with that observation. But you're using information that you already have up here. So Dr. Xargle's problem was that he was really good at making observations about babies, earthlets, but he doesn't know a lot about babies because he's never been around babies and doesn't have any knowledge in his brain about babies. So his inferences were not the best. So let's look at one example together. And I'm actually going to give you some answers here. So if you've made it this far, way to stay on top of your schoolwork. Good job. Okay, so I'm going to pick this one. The parent earthling mashes the food. Okay. Is that an observation or an inference? The parent earthling mashes. Okay, so Dr. Xargle could see the parent earthling mashing the food, right? So I would say that's an observation for sure, because he could see that happening with his own eyes, his many, many eyes. So can you find an inference that goes along with this observation? So let's see here. I'm going to look at my choices. Aha, this one has something to do with the food. It says, earthlets are fed through the mouth, nose, and ears. Okay, so we former babies and people who know babies know that earthlets are not fed through their mouth, nose, and ears. Just the mouth, please. Thank you. But Dr. Xargle doesn't know any babies, so he sees that food getting everywhere, all over a baby. You know, babies like to wear their food. And he inferred that they got their food through their ears and their nose as well as their mouth. So because he doesn't know much about babies, that might make sense to him. That's an explanation for that observation that makes sense to him. Now, you and I, who know about babies, we would be able to make a better inference about why the parent earthling was mashing the food, right? So this is how you do your assignment. You're going to find observations and put them in this column, and you'll find inferences and put them in this column. So be careful, read each one carefully, and once you think you've finished, you can turn in your assignment by clicking on the Turn In button. It'll show up here somewhere. And don't forget that there are, on the next slide, a few more videos if you have time of some other Dr. Xargle research books. Maybe you can take a look at some other observations and inferences he's made in his other books. Have fun!